Welcome to A City in Motion. I'm your host, Jeremiah LaDuca, and today we have Paul Comfort. He is currently the Senior Vice President and Chief Customer Officer of Modaxo. He is also a 6-time best-selling author with currently a #1 in Amazon. He is also the former CEO of the Maryland Transit Authority in Baltimore and has led many transit projects and has been a leader for many decades. Today, we are going to deep dive into Paul's journey from leading one of the nation's major transit agencies to his current role in the private sector. We'll be exploring his insights on what's working in America's transit, lessons from successful projects like Brightline and Purple Line, and how we can reframe public transportation to the public today. We will also talk about his podcast journey with Transit Unplugged, where he discusses some of the recent travels he's done in Europe and get his takeaway and some of those key aspects that we can implement in our transit systems in America. Thanks for listening and enjoy.
Yeah. And then did a week in Italy where we were filming. It was great. Milan, Florence, Rome, showed their high-speed rail.
Yeah.
Rode 3 different versions of it. And then last week in Boston for the Ep.2 conference was phenomenal. I moderated, I think, 4 panels, and it was made a lot of good conversations with, met the FTA administrator for the first time, the new guy.
Wow.
Had good conversations with a bunch of the CEOs, including New York City, who'd recently been on my podcast.
Yeah.
It was a good week. So
that's amazing.
Ready to head to Toronto next week to do some discussions with Canadian transit leaders. But happy to do podcast today, Jeremiah.
Yeah. I guess just starting off, so you were in Europe and you spent some time traveling and you probably learned a lot. I know you're trying to bring some of those things back to us just to see, we know that they have done so many things well. I was just in Switzerland and Barcelona this past summer and I got to see a lot of that.
Yeah.
It was just, now I'm a big architecture fan and Gaudi fan, and there's so many things going on there, but it was just, I was amazed at how well I was able to get around. But I don't know if you had any lessons that you learned from being there. I think you have like a very fresh mind. You're right back from coming there. I don't know. I wanted to hear a little bit about that.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So, what I took out of it was what we all know, that Europe does transit pretty well.
Yeah.
High-speed rail, unfortunately, America hasn't gotten there yet. I think Brightline trains has gotten us the closest.
Yeah.
Even with Amtrak adding in their new rail cars, I just was going to ride Amtrak to Boston, and from Wilmington, it was 7 hours.
Wow.
Like, dude, in an hour and less than an hour and a half plane ride. So come on, but there it's not that way. Their high-speed rail works well. They're 300 kilometers per hour trains. We rode 3 different companies. They're private. They're very privatized over there.
Wow.
We were there to film an episode of our Transit Unplugged TV show where we go to a little background. I spent 30 years in the transit business and was CEO of the Baltimore Transit System, the MTA, the Maryland Transit Administration, and then became a transit evangelist and trying to promote best practices around the world. And so this podcast started in that audio podcast, Transit Unplugged. And then after the pandemic, we wanted to show people what they've been hearing on the podcast. So the TV show has turned more into like a regular travel show, but it has one unique feature, right? So we show the food, fun, and culture. It's, it's Anthony Bourdain meets public transit.
Yeah.
We show the food, fun, and culture, but then we also show you how you can get around. And we talk to the leaders of the transit system and show you, you don't have to rent a car or take, rental cars. You can actually ride transit for most of what you want to do in most, especially European cities, but even in a lot of American cities. Yeah. So anyway, that's what we were doing over there. And so we met with, like in Milan, we met with the local transit system and show you all of that. It's very well integrated into the city. Jeremiah, the coolest thing was coming up from the underground subway system right onto the piazza where the Duomo was, which is a lot of these Italian cities have these big, fantastic churches there, like awe-inspiring, I'm not Catholic, but like after I was there, I want to be, but you're just like, wow, look at this, man.
Yeah.
And, so anyway, you come up the thing and there it is, like we don't have that much in America, we're like block down from where you want to go, so, but they have integrated it right into their the fabric of their cities, and that's why more people ride. I mean,
Yeah.
I just had Demetrius Kretschlaw on the podcast. He's the
Mm-hmm.
CEO of New York City Transit. And
Mm-hmm.
he's telling me, that a big chunk of New Yorkers ride transit, right? And I think people know that in New York City, they're America's largest transit city. 40% of all the rides that take place on public transportation on any given day in America happen in one city, New York.
Wow.
40%. And so the reason
Crazy.
is because you and I were talking about, our family is from New York City.
Yeah.
Because it's so integrated into the city, like it is in Hong Kong, like it is in London, like it is everywhere, and they
Yeah.
have tiny streets, and there's not multi-lane driving and plus parking lanes and all that stuff, and so the way they've structured their cities,
Yeah.
is that transit works best, and it's just featured in your life. So like my dad, I remember him saying, I could ride the the train all day for a nickel, and
Yeah.
back in the day, probably in the 40s, I imagine. And but that's not the way it is in most cities around America, right? We're not
Yeah.
fully integrated into it. But it's great to take back that, and also, I'm big on high speed rail. We need high speed rail in America,
Yeah.
and we haven't been able to figure out. When I was head of the Maryland Transit Administration, we were studying a high speed rail line between Baltimore and Washington, which
Mm.
would get the trip down to like 30 minutes, and now it's an hour and a half. And
Yeah.
we had a 20-some million dollar federal grant. They were studying it before I got there. I
Yeah.
served. I served my time. It's now 8 years later. Guess what they're still doing? Studying it.
Really.
So when are
It's
we going to pull the
crazy.
trigger on one of these things?
I
And like
know.
the California thing, everybody knows what happened out there, and now
Yeah.
it looks like their funding's been pulled. I think our best bet right now, Jeremiah, to get high speed rail in America is probably going to be private sector,
Yeah.
like it is in Europe, Brightline trains between Las Vegas and Los Angeles.
Yeah.
That's and they've already broken ground and they're moving forward in that. So, I mean,
Hmm.
they have pretty higher speed rail at a couple other places in America.
Yeah.
The trains that I ran, the MARC trains, Maryland commuter trains down to Washington D.C., could go up to 135 miles per hour, but that's not considered high speed. You got to be
Yeah.
faster than that. At least 180 miles per hour is what you're looking for high speed usually. So that's some of what I brought back. Also, what I
Yeah.
brought back was I did not realize how many food rules there are in Italy. My
Really.
Yes, it's like their national religion is food, and they have rules for everything. For
Wow.
instance, common things, but like they will not serve you a cappuccino after 12 noon. It's just not done. It's
Really.
a morning drink. It's not an afternoon drink like in America. We drink iced cappuccinos all day long.
Yeah.
Plus, they have awful air conditioning, even if you have a nice hotel. And but the and they don't want you to cut your noodles, your pasta. You cannot cut it. That's
Yeah.
against the rules. You have to twist it in, which is all okay. But I mean, even the cities have like what they're known for. Like I went to Florence
Hmm.
and we went up into Tuscany and we were going to do it's a great little restaurant up, in the vineyards. And I said, it'd be great to get some nice pasta up here. And our
Yeah.
host said, absolutely not. We don't. That's not what we do here. We meet here. So
Really. Holy
dinner that
cow.
night was a big hunk of beef brought out where they look at it kind of like the host looks at a bottle of wine and says, yeah, we'll try that. So they
Yeah.
give you the okay on the beef. They send it back. They don't ask you how you want it. They just
Hmm.
cook it all over a grill and they bring it back and they cut it up table side and they serve
Wow.
a bunch of hunks of meat on a big platter and you just take the one that's closest to you want medium or they don't do really medium well. It's medium or rare.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
getting there.
I
And
love it.
but anyway, yeah, a lot of interesting. Like I wanted carbonara in Florence, and they're like, no, no, you get that in Rome. That's where you eat that. So
Really.
very strict on their food. Yeah, very.
Yeah.
And I watched all of Stanley Tucci's shows,
I was about to
finding
say,
Italy
like,
beforehand, and I
yeah.
never got that from him. I got to send him a note and say, Stanley, you need to be more clear on this. But we're
I
clear on
know.
our show. We filmed a great episode, and that's going to run on YouTube
Yeah.
this December. It'll
Okay.
be our December episode, yeah, and it's on
That's
cable.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. There's so many great, I don't know. I feel like their food. I mean, my dad still, will make his own pasta at home. He's Italian. My mom's
Oh,
Caribbean.
okay.
So it's like very big. We haven't done our trip yet. It's coming soon. We're gonna
You
all,
need to do
but
it, man. Yeah.
Italy's amazing. So I'm
Rome,
excited.
Rome is the place to go. I
Yeah.
went, I went to Milan, Turin. We went where the church with the Shroud of Turin is pretty cool. I didn't
Yeah.
get to see it, but we went in there. And then uh, Florence, Milan, Turin, and Rome. And Rome was just, I only had like 20 hours there,
Yeah.
but it was fantastic. And they got a pretty good transit system too.
Hmm. Yeah. I guess just with I remember you were just talking about the high speed rail. I went to visit the Acela train in New York recently. It's not completely, I think their next one is going to be like what, considered high speed rail, but I know that was another big step for them. And I know a lot of people were just super excited to be on that. They just, everything looked newer. That whole station is like completely transformed. It's like a wellness shopping, I don't even know, like hub. And yeah, I think the Brightline is going to be the big one. Your purple line, I think those are
Yeah.
the big things that's going to change a lot of those. I think actually our company, Atkins Realis, they had worked a little bit with the purple line too. I'm not sure exactly, who, but
Yeah, I think I
I
saw their name on the list of vendors. Yeah, the way these projects work, as you know, because you're working in it, but for your
Mhm.
listeners, um, so the Purple Line is a 16.2-mile light rail line which goes on the outskirts of Washington D.C. in the Maryland suburbs. So when I was head
Yeah,
of the MTA, I was in charge of constructing it, and we were going to run it.
yeah,
So we got it started, and that was like I said 8 years ago, and as of a month ago when I was filming there, they're 78% complete. So that's how long it takes to build these rail projects.
wow.
There was, lawsuits that held it up, a change in
Mhm.
overall vendors. But the way they work is a consortium of bidders will be put together, and they'll be
Yeah,
led by, the money people who fund it because it's design, build, operate, and maintain normally like a 30-year contract.
yeah.
So they're putting their like here's their little purple line train that
Oh
they
wow,
I was there the other day.
I love
So
it.
it's one of the longest light rail trains. Now that's not high speed rail for your listeners. There's
Yeah.
multiple types of rail, right? So
Mhm.
light rail is analogous to streetcars, is analogous to trams. They call it different
Mhm.
things. Like I was in Australia last year in Melbourne, and they have the world's largest tram network. They call it called Yara
Wow. All right,
that's
Trent.
actually being run by Transdev right now
Mhm.
in a kind of joint venture with someone else. But so your light rail is what we're building here, and
Yeah,
it's almost done, and it will go slow. It's not fast. It goes
yeah.
through the campus of University of Maryland, College Park, actually.
Mhm.
Um, but it will get you there. You get on the train, and it's a good connector, and it connects you into WMATA, Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority's
Yeah,
overall rail system. Then you've got your higher speed trains, right? We MARC trains are example commuter rail. That's called heavy rail in America. So you've got
yeah,
your light rail, which is what we just talked about. They're lighter vehicles. Then you got and they're powered by catenary wires on top, uh,
yeah.
pantograph that grabs onto it normally.
Okay.
Then you've got your subway systems, which are underground, like New York subways, and they're normally powered by a third rail. That's why
Mm.
you hear that terminology, the third rail. Don't touch the third rail. Why?
Yeah,
Because it's electrified, and
yeah,
that's how these subways are operating on
yeah.
underneath power. And I mean, you will get fried if you touch that. That's why you can't go on the tracks. Um,
Mhm.
so, a lot of subways in the cities around the country and around the world run on that third rail. Then you've
Yeah,
got your heavy rail, which is the L in Chicago, or the commuter or the Metro trains, which go into Chicago. I guess is the better example of that. And then
yeah.
New York City, Long Island Railroad, BART.
Mhm.
These are trains that bring people in from the suburbs normally into the cities or the
Yeah,
market, and they're run by coal in the old days, and then they went to diesel, and now they're moving sometimes toward battery electric. I'll be
wow.
touring the train company in Utah that
Yeah,
Mark Ritter is the CEO of out there, and Stadler is what it's called, the German company that's built a factory here in the U.S. now, and they're building lots of different types of trains, but they're building heavy rail, and now they're specializing in a type which has a battery pack in it, which will help it be more electrified
oh
and
wow.
cleaner when it goes into the city. A lot of times, what they do, I was just in Boston, and Keolis runs the trains for MBTA, the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority there, which is a state agency, just like in
Mhm.
Maryland, but runs the transit in Boston. And I
Gotcha.
remember they were telling me about a year ago, the CEO he was excited that they were going to propose to them. So when these heavy diesel trains come in, that they're pulled by, a locomotive, that the last portion of their trip, they would be electrified. It would be overhead
Yeah,
and battery so that it would be cleaner, wouldn't be puffing out any smoke basically when you come into the downtown areas. So that's
yeah,
kind of the lay of the land a lot when it comes to trains. It's not everything, but that's like kind of a layman's version of what we're doing with trains now. And high
yeah,
speed rail, just to finish it up,
yeah,
high speed rail is in places like Europe, it's rails. You got the steel wheels on rail tracks, but very fast. The
yeah.
nose of the train is pointed down, looks kind of cool. But then you go to Japan, And they have something, and in China they have too, what's called maglev, magnetic levitation. Magnets,
Oh, wow.
the train actually doesn't touch the track; it comes off the track,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's powered by It's not powered by magnets; it's powered by electricity, but it's a
Hmm.
different type of propulsion, and it's a
Yeah.
different type of setup. The engineering is so you don't have the steel wheels slowing you down. You can go
Yeah.
super fast on maglev. I've ridden one in China. I haven't been to
Wow.
Japan yet, but that was a
Yeah.
technology that we were studying here. But nobody's planning that right now. The Maryland was planning that Japanese technology, but
Yeah.
it's super expensive. And now with environmental rules and regulations, and some countries around the world, they don't really care about that too much. So they just come
Yeah.
in and lay it down.
Yeah.
Not worried about your EPA
Yeah.
study that your company probably gets involved in, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's how they can build so many of it in some countries. So
Wow. I guess so. I remember. So I wanted to sort of transition a little bit, but there was you had talked about on one of your podcasts a lot of these misconceptions. You had sat down and you did a less formal podcast, and you were talking about a lot of the misconceptions where people think that now this new administration is shutting down almost everything, and we have to lose hope, and we have to now wait
yeah, yeah,
another 4 years for anything to change. And like you had brought up that maybe some things decrease slightly, or I think you said something went from like 9 to like 8 point mil.
yeah.
So there was things like that had changed, but can you just talk about and just, I don't know, sort of give some momentum where we don't have to give up? There are a lot of things going on right now, and funding is still, being supplied where it's needed right now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, um, good. It's a really good point, Jeremiah. So, I
Yeah.
think the unknown makes people
Yeah.
worried, and people were worried that the Trump administration would come in and they would take transit and make it kind of like they were doing in the Department of Education, which is kind of taking it all apart. Well, that's not what's happened. On the contrary, now the caveat is they did reduce staff at the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, was
Yeah.
up to like 765 employees, something like that. And now I think
Mm.
it's down around 400.
Yeah.
And some of the regional administrators, and there was a certain Friday where they all had to let go a lot of their newer staff, people with less seniority. You remember when the administration first got started and Doge
Yeah.
was coming in and looking at all that. So that was
Mm.
disrupting to the FTA's offices.
Yeah.
I knew people personally that had jobs and then were let go, and they had to find other gigs afterwards. But that
Oh,
has
wow.
seemed to have settled down now and settled out. And
Hmm.
they've now have the FTA administrator is a guy named Mark Molinaro,
Hmm.
and he comes from local government like I do. I was a county commissioner, a county administrator. He understands the importance of transit, and he just spoke just a week or two ago at the APTA conference, and he
Hmm.
said transit matters because family matters. They're the foundation of our nation, and this administration's focus on delivering outcomes that actually improve their daily lives. And he emphasized the importance of safer rides, cleaner
Hmm.
stations, more accessible systems, and supporting American manufacturing and preparing U.S. transit networks for major global events like the 2026 FIFA World Cup. And then, of course, the Olympics are coming to LA after that.
Yeah.
And so instead, it seems like what they're doing is not taking apart transit. They're focusing us back on their traditional KPIs, the key performance indicators, and pulling out the emphasis that the previous administration had on equity and inclusion and on electric sustainability, electric buses and sustainability. Now, I
Yeah.
got to tell you, a lot of CEOs have told me off the record they're actually sighing a big breath of relief because they did
Yeah.
not want to do battery electric buses. They felt like they did not meet their needs on their heavier runs that go more than 100 miles in a day, and they felt like they were
Mm.
having their arms twisted. So what they've
Yeah.
told me, a lot of times they're not going to tell me that on the record. So the fact
Yeah.
that the administration is saying we're not against battery electric, we're just going to let you choose what you want. If you want
Gotcha.
CNG, which is a lower, the podcast we have this week is with John Gary Herrera, who is
Hmm.
head of the San Antonio VIA system, and they have the highest customer satisfaction rates in America for the last 2 years for any major transit system. Well, they're
Yeah.
doubling down on CNG, compressed natural gas. It's almost no emissions. It's low emissions.
Yeah.
Other
Yeah.
people want to do hydrogen. I'm a big proponent of hydrogen. I think that's a
Yeah.
technology that we need to do more with.
Hmm.
So they're focusing more on safety, right? I mean, people saw what happened in New York and recently in Charlotte, North Carolina, where woman got stabbed on a train down there. It's awful. And
Yeah.
so those headline events drive the public perception of public transportation. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
what's the old saying? If it bleeds, it leads, right? And so it's sadly true in these cases where people are being pushed in front of trains or stabbed or harassed. A lot of it's
Yeah.
not super violent like murder, but it's
Yeah.
it's harassment. It's people that make you feel uncomfortable on the train. And
Yeah.
there's Instagram pages all about crazy things that happen on subways, and you watch that, you go,
Yeah.
holy moly, you're not going to catch me on that.
I
So,
know.
uh, and yet when you look at the overall numbers in a lot of cities, they are improving. A lot
Hmm.
of transit systems are doing more, like Randy Clark, the head of WMATA, put in brand new subway stanchion systems or gates, so you can't jump over the gate. You got to
Yeah.
6 feet high or 7 feet high, whatever it is, and so you're not losing your fare box money. They lost like $40 million 2 years ago. They counted how many people cheated, and New York City's doing some of the same things. So are some of the others. Some of
Wow.
them, like New York City, don't have their own police department. They work with the city police department that assigns them things, and other places have their own police department, like the MTA in Baltimore, where I was at. There's like 150 officers there, but it's a statewide system. So, but the
Yeah.
administration is basically saying, listen, you got to clean up your act. You got to get rid of graffiti. You got to get rid of trash, and you got to get rid of crime. You got to
Yeah.
really double down on that. That's what I'm hearing them say. And as I mentioned, I got the chance to talk to the administrator personally. He seems like a very sharp guy, and has a real vision for what he wants to see, which is more ridership on transit. But it's more
Yeah.
like the old saying, "If you build it, they will come."
Yeah.
People are scared in big cities to ride transit. They just are. I mean, LA Metro did a study a couple years ago about women being afraid of getting on transit in LA and Los Angeles. And so he's right. We do need to improve the image of public transportation by making it cleaner, safer, and more accessible. We don't want to forget people with disabilities or the elderly. We want to make sure
Yeah.
that, to me, that's super important. I've always been involved with that most of my career in ADA paratransit. I
Yeah.
was in charge of it for 5 years at Washington Metro through a contractor, MV, and I get to see the impact it has on people's lives that do have disabilities. It
Yeah.
provides them access to all of life's opportunities. And Mr. Molinaro is very focused on that as well. He has a family situation there where he understands that personally. And
Yeah.
so most people in the industry now that I've talked to, and I just talked to 50 leaders last week in Boston,
Yeah.
they're not afraid anymore of what's coming out of the administration. They actually think it's largely, it may not be everything they wanted, but
Yeah.
it's not, the scary unknown. They've come out pretty clear on what they want. Now, if you want to know what's going on with, the funding, that's another issue, right?
Yeah.
So, do you want to go into that
Hmm.
for a few minutes?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit
Transit
about
funding?
that?
Okay. So,
Yeah.
yes. Okay. So, here in America, we have a bill passed every 5 years called an Authorization Act. You might remember it started back in 1964 with the Urban Mass Transportation Act. And every 5 years or 6 years it's passed, and it authorizes Congress to pass funding for the future years, and it sets funding caps, and it sets guidelines and rules for the federal government to fund transportation. Remember, transportation in America is not nationalized. It's local.
Hmm.
I mean, you're there in Atlanta. I'm here near
Yeah.
Baltimore and Washington. Each of those cities have their own transit system formed by their own local governments. It all is government run now, by the way, or quasi government. We don't have any private directly run transit anymore like there used to be in America. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but I have a
Yeah.
children's book about public transportation called Public Transportation from the Tom
Yeah.
Thumb Railroad to Hyperloop and beyond. And
Hmm.
it tells the whole history of it. And so I researched it heavily and I confirmed it with lots of people around the country. Basically,
Hmm.
the 1950s were the heyday of public transportation in America. All the
Hmm.
men, and there were men, came back from the war, from World
Yeah.
War II, and their wives largely were like my grandmom was working in a bomb factory in New York, in New
Wow.
York City. Yeah. And so the women had gone into the workforce for the first time,
Hmm.
really, in American history, and the men were coming back looking for jobs. And there were no really two car families, right? They were lucky
Yeah.
if they had one car. And in most of the cities, they were riding transit. So, man, ridership went up big time in the 1950s. And
Yeah.
transit was operated by private companies, by
Hmm.
utility companies.
Wow.
And so then, but in the 1970s, by then, people had a car or two cars and they stopped riding transit as much and ridership plummeted. And then the
Mm.
government took over. City governments, state governments bought the assets of those utility companies and they became government entities. Then the federal government got involved in 1964 with some funding, capital mostly first, then some operating dollars. And so the federal government largely stays in its lane of capital dollars for large transit systems, which is bricks and mortar, buses, trains, tracks, those kind of things. And the operating dollars are mostly raised by local people in the fare box. And the fare box recovery ratio in America has continued to drop, meaning the percentage of money that comes in for fares versus the operating costs. It's less than 25% in most cities. And on buses, it's like 15% or less in most cities in America.
Wow.
So the federal government does have a large part to play. And during the pandemic, they stepped up in a big way and gave multi-billion dollars to transit agencies. So that's where we're at now. That's a little bit of the history on transit. So 50s were the heyday. And then ridership started to plummet in the 70s. And the government has had to step up and pick up some of the funding. So this reauthorization that we're under currently, you might remember it's called the IIJA. Some people call it the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. And our reauthorization was inside that overall Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. That expires September 30th of 2026, next year, about 1 year from today, almost exactly.
Wow.
And so the House and the Senate are working on versions of it. I went into Capitol Hill a couple months ago and met with the House staff. They were doing a listening session. And the group that I'm associated with, the North American Transit Alliance, which represents private contractors that help provide transit across the country, they testified on it. And so they're working on it. And it looks like they're going to get it on the floor of the House by the end of the year.
Wow.
It's the Overall Authorization Act. And the FTA and other people are having input onto what the rules for transit will look like going forward.
Yeah.
Now, each year you got to pass a budget to fund it. So the Senate passed their bill, $21.1 billion for next year, which will start October 1st in a week. And the House passed its bill, $19.2 billion, a little less. Senate was more than last year. House was a little less. And the next step is they have to reconcile it as part of the overall budget process. And you saw what happened this week. The president just declined to meet with the House and Senate Democratic leaders because he felt like their requests were too much for him. He didn't want to talk about it, it sounded like. So the question is, are we going to get a continuing resolution, which means we just keep a clean funding for the next 6 to 8 weeks, which is what the House of Representatives passed. Speaker Johnson sent the House home and said, we're done our work. It's on the Senate now. And the Senate did not pass it. It failed. And so if no action is taken by October 1st, there could be a partial government shutdown. Funding that happens for transit in America, things will kind of be locked up a little bit. Some FTA staff will probably be sent home. And so things will slow down. But it doesn't mean transit will stop. As I told you, most of the funding is coming in capital projects anyway. The operating dollars to run the trains day to day and the buses largely come from local sources. So that's where we're at right now. That's like a 10-minute picture of what the history of transit in America and from my perspective, just my perspective, what I see happening right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you. I feel like there's so many different things going on, and there are clear differences now with this administration, but like you said, a lot of those things are locally funded, and that has to keep running. People need to get to where they're going, and a lot of these things are not going to stop right now. I guess also regarding some of those things, one thing I saw, I think it was literally yesterday, these are little tools that I think have really helped popularize it and get more people on board, especially younger generations. I saw that Cardi B is like doing the sound for the MTA. I think it's literally starting probably this week. So things like that where you're going on board and you hear a familiar voice and you're like, wait a second, it sort of makes it just more welcoming and more happy, and you're like, wow, like this is like this brings it in. There was a lot of other local New York artists that they've matched up with the MTA cards. They've done like collaborations with where their face is on it. So, when we're so used to just tapping our phone now, it might make us go get a card and then other people will see it, and it just brings more popularity. People that see our phone is not thinking, the train or whatnot. So these are little tools that I think have really helped. I'm not sure if you have seen any other tools like this around where people have really brought it out or tried to popularize it to, make it more broad generations or whatnot.
Yeah, I love that. I think Seth Rogen did one in Canada as well, where they're getting, bigger stars that are popular or sports stars to do transit. When I was at the MTA, I felt like our brand equity needed a boost. The MTA was not viewed as a on-time performance engine. Our on-time performance was pretty bad when I got there, and we
Mhm.
worked hard to improve it. So I felt like we needed to improve our brand equity. One way to do it was actually to improve the service, but another way, on the image side, what you're talking about, like the Cardi B
Yeah.
thing, or there's other singing stars that have been out big on telling people to ride transit.
Yeah.
But was I tried to follow a theory I believe in called linkage.
Mm.
Henry Kissinger back in the day. I'm a little older than you. You might not remember him, but I remember
Mhm.
talking about linkage. There's linkage in foreign policy. Between
Oh.
I believe in the linkage of brand equity. How can
Mm.
you lift your agency's brand equity? Here's a
Yeah.
way. Why not tie your agency to organizations or institutions in your city that already have high brand equity? So in Baltimore, for instance, I connected up with the Baltimore Ravens. They had just won the Super Bowl. Joe Flacco, our quarterback, was there. So
Yeah.
we contracted with Joe Flacco to come in,
Wow.
do a press conference with me about riding transit, and had his image on the side of 5 of our buses because he's number 5 then, with his arm
Mhm.
back throwing, the Super Bowl MVP. He
Oh,
did a
that's
press
great.
conference. He met our employees, and we, for people that only pay attention to the sports pages, hey, now we're speaking their language. Joe Flacco's on
Yeah.
the MTA. That's pretty cool. Then
Yeah.
I did a deal with the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra, the
Oh, wow.
BSO, where they would come out and they would do things with our system. So you're taking the light rail line up to Camden Yards to watch the Baltimore Orioles play. You get off the train, and there's a 4-string quartet playing there on Friday night, welcoming you to the station. Those kind of things just increased what I tried to do is increase the brand equity by
Yeah.
linking us with other institutions like them, like the Hippodrome,
Mhm.
and also the Orioles. We did a lot of stuff with them where we had their players come out and do things with us, and they came to our employee picnics. I had them boost the morale of the existing employees and do autographs and all that kind of stuff. So the idea is what you're talking about is kind of making transit cool and sexy again, by
Yeah.
bringing in current relevant people to talk about transit, to ride transit,
Mhm.
to do a video clip of them sitting on the light rail car. I
Yeah.
mean, you'd think, well, what's that going to do? Well, you know what? It does a lot. Um,
Mm.
People, associate with those stars, those artists, and if we can connect them to transit, all the more
Yeah.
better.
That's awesome. And I guess this will be one of the last questions, and then I'll go through. We have like a little high speed, fast question
Okay,
section.
sure, yeah.
But yeah, so you were talking about the orchestra and whatnot. I know that you played, I think, piano when you were younger. And I think music was probably really important for you. Same with me. I played, violin. I actually went on tour in Europe and did
Nice.
a little trip with that when I was in high school. So music was really important. And then music in church too, for me, has also been important. I know you said you did a little bit of that as well.
Yes.
Um, and I wanted to hear like a little bit about how that, I don't know, your faith or anything, if you're welcome to share, just like how your faith has played into like, motivation and keeping you going and helping you move in the different transit space. I just wanted to hear a little bit about that if you're okay
Yeah,
with that.
sure. Happy to. Yeah, I still do play piano. I love playing it in
Mhm.
uh, in train stations. Just
Oh
when I
yeah.
was in Florence, Italy, we did a flash mob scene for the show
Yeah.
with a guy named Pavel, who was our fixer there, who brought in a team of he teaches swing dance. So they brought in
Wow.
swing dancers, and I played it when the Saints go marching in the train station, and they came on and did a whole sequence that'll be in
I
our
love it.
December. It'll be cool, man. Yeah, I've gotten like 10,000 hits on a little clip I did on LinkedIn on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up very active in the church. My dad was a pastor. I played piano in church. I still do
Mhm.
off and on
Yeah.
with my son, who plays guitar at a local Presbyterian church, and I go there and play with him once in a while. Yeah, but my faith is an important part of who I am as a person, and
Mhm.
it centers me, just like my family does. Right? I'm married with 6 kids, 9 grandkids, and so
Wow.
high school
It's
sweetheart.
amazing.
We're celebrating 38 years next month.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
Congrats.
and so it centers me, and it also I think empowers me, and it is given me. Very mission oriented, and I've always been, it's had its good sides and its bad sides to be mission
Mhm.
oriented.
Yeah.
Sometimes you come in. My next book is called Find Your X Factor, and
Yeah.
it's about the intersection between your interest and abilities and how that's your
Mm.
kind of your sweet spot. It's more like a TED Talk kind of book instead of a transportation book like my 6 first books. But
Yeah.
as I started analyzing, kind of my life career path as working on the book some, I realized, sometimes that mission orientation can get you fired.
Yeah.
You come in, you got a mission, you think you know what you're doing, and nobody else really does like you do. And you come in like a bull in a china shop and you step on enough toes and people are like, you're not a team player. And so
Yeah.
I've got a
Wow.
chapter in my book called Change Agent or Cheerleader, which
Wow.
are you? And
Yeah.
talk about the pros and the cons of each of those,
I love that.
So, so it is an important part of my life. And, I think, as I said, it centers me and it is kind of at the core of my identity.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot there, and I think I know for me, I've also definitely felt motivated, and it really helps your connection with people and how to just communicate their certain things. And I think there's a lot, to take away from that as well. Thank you for sharing. And this is the last section. I called this the high speed question time. So we're gonna go through. They're 10, super short answers. We're gonna, fly through it. Yeah, so first one, you could magically redesign one transportation system overnight. Which city would you choose and why?
Baltimore, my old MTA.
Okay.
And so I would do it because, the city of Baltimore needs continual improvement in their transit system. They're working on it.
Yeah.
It is essential to hundreds of thousands of people every day to their lives. And so it needs to be safe, efficient, reliable, and have world-class customer service. To me, that's the cornerstones of any great transit system. So they have a great CEO there, Holly Arnold, who was the chief of capital budgets when I was there, and she's worked her way up in the agency and become CEO. And
Wow.
just filmed an episode of our Transit Unplugged TV show. It's on YouTube right now. It has like 115,000 views on YouTube now. And so she's doing a good job, but if I was going to transform one, that would be the one to transform.
Wow. Okay. And then, so electric vehicles or public transit, which one will have a bigger impact on urban mobility in the next decade?
Yeah, I think because of the Trump administration's positions on electric vehicles, I think that we're going to see less of them and more of traditional fossil fuel vehicles and CNG, especially compressed natural gas and other hydrogen and things like that. There's less emphasis now on battery electric, and so I think a lot of agencies are just going to go with what they know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what's the single most underrated transportation innovation that could transform cities?
Yeah, it's tap and go.
Okay.
Payment cards. So we want to make it easy. You talked about we use our phones and all. Yeah, I mean, I remember being in London, Jeremiah, with Shashi Verma, who was the Chief Technology Officer of Transport for London, about 9 years ago, and he had just instituted the world's first tap and go system. They call it contactless fare payment is the kind of official title, but most people actually tap. It's not contactless. They touch their card or they touch their thing to it. So I use tap and go. And but that means you didn't need an Oyster card, or in Baltimore it's called the Charm card, or in other cities they have another name for it. Your own little card, another app, another something. No, we need to make it easy and have fare capping on top of it, meaning you tap your credit card. If you ride more often, it'll cap you off on the same rate you would get if you had a multi-use card. So contactless cards or tap and go along with fare capping is got to take America by storm. It has in most cities, but some of them haven't done it yet. And we need to make it frictionless so people can just get on. And the other thing is QR codes on bus stop signs. I tell a story about, I was in Fort Lauderdale a couple years ago. My wife and daughter were with me. I was out filming all day. I had the car, so they were at the hotel swimming. But she said, I would have taken the bus. It was right out front. But I didn't know when the bus comes. I didn't know how much it costs. I didn't know where it goes. And I didn't know when it would come. There's no information on there about what a real person would need if they were coming and they didn't know about the. So systems need to think about people that don't ride it now and make it easy for them. And one way to do it is to put a QR code on every freaking bus stop sign and station in your system. And if you put some, 99% of people have phones now or something like that. All you got to do is click on that. It says, oh, you're on the L line. The bus comes every 7 minutes. It'll be coming in 3 minutes. Even if it's just a stick in the mud and it's not like a shelter with electric, you can still get that information to people. So do it.
Yeah. I love it. What's one bold transportation prediction that sounds crazy today, but you believe may come true in the next decade?
Autonomous air travel. I want to be one of the first ones to have an autonomous air taxi land in my front yard, pick me up, and take me to Washington, D.C. and drop me right on the roof of the FTA. That's
I
what I
love
want to do.
it.
So I've already
I
told all
love
the
that.
manufacturers, make me your test case.
Yeah,
Yeah, so not really, but once they get it safety perfected.
they
But you know what
gotta
I
have
mean? Yeah,
something. Yeah, yeah.
I think that'll happen in the next decade. It'll
Wow.
be revolutionary. I mean, they're already doing it with packages. In a lot of
Yeah.
cities, a drone will come and drop it off,
Oh
and
yeah.
so it's just a little bit more firepower in the engine, and they can lift me up
I
at my
love it.
105 pounds. No, just kidding.
Which international city has transportation systems America should be most jealous of or
Yeah, London.
inspired by?
Yeah,
London.
yeah.
Okay.
London. I love London system. It's very well integrated into the city.
Hmm.
And I loved Barcelona. Like you went to Barcelona
Yeah,
as an overall city. They've got a pretty good transit system too, I think. And I
it's
met with their
great.
leaders, and we did an episode of our show there. If somebody wants to see what it's like to ride transit in Barcelona, plus see the food, fun, and culture, the
Yeah,
Transit Unplugged TV show from Barcelona is a great kind of entree to that.
I love that. Um, is the 15-minute city concept achievable in most American suburbs, or have we lost our mind? I know some
Yeah.
people, I know you've probably heard a little bit about like the 15-minute city, getting around and having that quick, connect and
Yeah.
access.
Yeah, that's it. That is I taught a class, a graduate course at Villanova this last year, university on public transportation systems, and we dove into that quite a bit. The
Mhm.
15-minute city. It is. I think it'll work in some places and not in others.
Mhm.
And I think that some people are worried of the kind of control that the
Mhm.
15-minute city puts on people's lives. And so there is a little fear of that, yeah, what is this all about? Why do you want to keep me without my own way to get around? And people are worried about Minority Report kind of stuff, where
Yeah.
government can shut down your vehicle and those kind of things. And so
Mhm.
I think that's not a priority, obviously, of the current administration. And so
Mhm.
we'll see where it goes. But I haven't heard a lot of talk about it in the last 6 months.
Okay. I know you've talked a little bit about this already, but like autonomous vehicles, yes or no?
Yeah, I'm all in favor of them, but it's a niche thing, right? It's
Yeah.
not going to replace everything. I think, campuses, right? College campuses where you got parking, half a mile out from buildings. It makes sense to
Yeah.
run an autonomous shuttle on a loop that works, and Nat Ford is doing it down in
Yeah.
Jacksonville, Florida. He's a good friend of mine. They got the whole line vehicles coming over. They're going to build a manufacturing plant there where they can then meet Buy America. So I think it's going to happen, but it's not going to take over everything. It's not going to replace 40-foot buses anytime soon. It'll be these
Okay.
smaller 11 to 12 passenger autonomous shuttles that work in specific situations, a tourist destination, a corporate or a college campus, or a closed loop system. I mean, that I think is most likely in the next 10 years.
Yeah, I think that's great. I know I got to, there was a graduate from tech who's working at Beep now, and I got to hear a little
Yeah, I
bit
love Beep.
about, what they've been working through, and it's very interesting, especially right now. They're definitely making some moves, which is great.
Yeah.
So if you were the Secretary of Transportation for a day with an unlimited budget, what's the first project you would green light?
I would green light assisting Brightline trains to build that freaking high-speed rail between Vegas, go all the way to LA, not 10
Yeah.
miles outside of the city where
Yeah,
people
yeah.
have to drive and park in a parking lot. That was a problem that happened, in my opinion, with the California high-speed rail. They didn't have
Mhm.
enough money, so they kept cutting down the ends, and it ended up being, the critics called it, a train from nowhere to nowhere because it didn't have a major, anchor on either side. So
Yeah.
you need to have the train, just like I talked to you about at the beginning of the podcast, where you walk up and you're on the piazza,
Yeah.
So we need to have high-speed rail right into the middle of Vegas, right into the outskirts of Los Angeles. Let's make it happen. America, come on. We're the greatest
Yeah.
country in the world. We need to catch up with the rest of the world when it comes to high-speed rail.
I love it. And yeah, that was basically the end of the high speed question. I want to thank you again. This was amazing. I feel like we have so many great things that people are going to pull from, from all different groups. And yeah, thank you again for coming. I'm going to pause this.
Jeremiah, thank you for your passion for public transportation. We need good young people like you to continue to spur us on. And thanks for having me on your show, man.
Thank you.
I would like to thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed Paul Comfort. Stay tuned for next week. We have Deborah Johnson, the CEO of RTD. She is amazing and a great voice in transportation, and I think you guys are going to enjoy the next episode. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.